Hey guys, gals, and MPs, and I'm here today with the Novation Peak, and we're gonna have a little fun with it. We're gonna have some fun with the FM capabilities of this synth. A lot of people don't know that this has some really cool FM capabilities. I know it's mostly known for being a wavetable synth with an FPGA-based oscillation section, which technically, if you want to believe the marketing, is it makes for aliasing or aliased-free waveforms, which is really nice for FM because we can get some nice clean waveforms in there, and it just pitch tracks pretty well and things like that. But we could make it a little harsh, filter that out, and then make some unbelievably beautiful cinematic strings doing that. And I've been doing this, or I've been working on this patch for a few days now, and I kind of got it to a place where I want it, so I kind of want to share it with everybody. So let's just get started in that. That all said, let's click the initialize button. All right, and let's go to oscillator 1. We're going to go over here to find the saw density. Oops, we're in oscillator 2. Well, that's my bad, isn't it? All right, so let's go to oscillator 1, choose saw density. There we go. I'm going to get that nice and high. So yeah, like that, and we're going to go ahead and go into the mod matrix, and we want to just choose a direct here. We want to choose the destination. We're going to choose the FM functionality, which should be FM 1 into 2. So yeah, we're not going to hear anything, even if we turn the depth up, because we need to bring up the oscillator. Bring it about halfway. By default, oscillator 1 should be at 255, but let's bring this up a little. And let's change the tuning. We want to actually bring the range of oscillator 1 over to 4. We're going to keep this at 8 feet, and then we're going to turn the coarse tuning up to 5. Sounds unbelievably harsh and kind of terrible. But just wait until we filter it out and use some filter overdrive. It's going to sound really cool. All right. So yeah, we want to go ahead and change this to a sine. Let's add some release just for the heck of it on the amp envelope. Sounding less harsh, obviously, now that we are using a sine here on oscillator 2. We can mess with this later, but yeah, this is what happens with oscillator 2. And now let's go ahead and bring in oscillator 3, and we're going to change oscillator 3 to 2 feet as well. We're going to bring it in. We're going to go ahead and go to oscillator here, and we want to choose oscillator 3, and we will want some oscillator 3 saw density. Sounds unbelievably massive. It's sounding a lot less harsh than what we started with, but the magic is really going to come in. One of the features that the Novation Peak has over a lot of other synths, yeah, it's a hybrid synth, but almost all of its drive, VCAs, and its filter and all that section, I think all of it actually is analog, and it has some interesting drive characteristics that make patches just sound very interesting, obviously. So we want to go ahead and change the slope, and we want to change it down to 12 dB here on the filter. And what we want to do is now we want to bring the VCA way down. We want to bring it maybe at 47. That's what I had it set for on the patch I was working on. It's going to be very quiet now, but we're going to bring the overdrive all the way up. Just crank the overdrive. And now we want to bring the filter down. So like about half, right? And now we want to bring the frequency up. Bring in a little more resonance. filter. So bring it out, open it up a little. All right, let's shape our amp envelope. Let's bring up an octave here on our keyboard. Let's close the filter a little. Let's what you want to do is, because I think I've noticed a bug, at least in the firmware, with key tracking on this. You want to change the key tracking, turn it up and turn it all the way down. We're going to go ahead and use some negative key tracking where we get more filtering on the high frequencies. Just believe me, that's going to be a thing. So go into the mod matrix, and we want to go ahead and change over here to slot 3, because we're going to use slot 2 again. Actually, let's just do slot 2 first. I know I'm all over the place, but let's use slot 2 for more FM. We want to add FM from the oscillator 2 to oscillator 3 now. So oscillator 2 to 3, let's turn the depth to around 22. That's good. Let's go back to the first one. Let's turn the depth down a little. There we go. We're getting this nice raspy string sound, like you're bowing a string almost. So that's really cool in my opinion. Yeah, so that's just from the overdrive characteristics into the filter and on just the FM that we've done so far. So yeah, let's close the filter a little more. All right, let's go ahead and go to slot 3, and we want to use this to go from the keyboard. So we want to go keyboard into the destination of the filter. So filter frequency, and we want it negative. So higher frequencies should, in theory, close down the filter. See, now we're closing it. Not so much, maybe up a little. Mess with the resonance a little. Cool, right? All right, now what we can do is we can mess with the mixer a little to get a little nicer sound. So we could turn up the oscillator 2 a little. Turn down oscillator 3, for example. We can turn down the first oscillator a little. Add a little more attack. Maybe even a little more attack. Obviously, that sounds really nice, but it's kind of, there's no stereo spread to it, obviously, because we're not using any of the effects or the stereo divergence in the synth itself, and we don't have any, we don't have reverb and delay. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to the effects section, and we want to go to the first page of the effects section. We want to change this to basically serial routing. So want chorus to go into delay to go into reverb. We're not going to use the chorus, but we're going to use the delay and the reverb. But we want to turn down the dry level. Otherwise, we're going to get this weird zippering style effect because the feedback loops on each of the effects gets fed back through. So it's like you're double feeding it back. I don't know how else to put it. I feel like it's a software bug in the synth, or maybe it was intended that way, but it's a little weird and I don't like the sound of it. You get a little too much overdrive when you do that and the effects sound weird. The only caveat, if you do that, then the bypass mutes the effects. Watch the whole section. But now this is a full dry to wet mix. So at noon, it'll be 50-50. So let's go ahead and go to our reverb section to turn it to type 3. Let's go into effects. And we're going to go, we were already in effects. I'm just bad at demoing things apparently. And let's go into the mod rate. And the mod rate needs to go up to around 30 or so on the reverb. And we want to make sure the size is on 127. 127 is what we wanted. I think unless you double click initialize twice, then this will stay what your last reverb settings were. It's a weird thing. But yeah, so reverb size 127, mod depth 64, and then the rate of 30, and then we'll use the time control here and the level here, and let's listen to that. Turn it to about noon so you get 50-50. Turn the reverb time to about 105 or so. All right, cool. We're going to go ahead and crank down the reverb because we're going to add the delay now. And we want to hear just what the delay does. So let's go. We're still in the effects section. Let's go to delay. Let's change the L to R ratio to either 4:3 or 3:4. It doesn't really matter because we're not going to use it rhythmically because we're putting a pad into it, so it's not going to matter too much. We're mostly using it to sustain the note even further or the notes and to add a little bit more stereo depth to everything. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and turn it to 50-50, and so we'll hear what it sounds like. All right, and go to the next page of the delay setting. It's page 6 if you have the latest firmware. You need the latest firmware for this function, I believe, because there's not a type setting on earlier firmwares. You want to change this to crossfeed, unless there was. I don't remember. I guess there was like crossfeed. It just didn't have like the lo-fi settings. And we want to turn the feedback to around 50-50. So like 64 is obviously in between 65, 64. It's very, very ambient in the context of like a string patch, and it has that sound that if you've ever played Skyrim, if you listen to the background music to when you're just exploring, you kind of have those strings come in every now and then. It has that very, very raspy, really nice ambient string sound, and that's what I was going for. So yeah, now let's add the reverb into it. I think I mentioned you need this on type 3, but yeah. There we go, and that's really what I've been working on. Now we can tweak it a little bit. Let's go ahead and tweak it a little bit. We can add a little more resonance. We can change the filter up. We can change the oscillator shapes and things like that. So let's play with the oscillator shapes. Make sure you're in the manual mode. Let's not mess with the shape of oscillator 2 because that'll make everything pulsate really badly. So let's just, because we're using this 2 is frequency modulating 3 and 1. So yeah, you can see that obviously we did that earlier. So oscillator 2 is, 1 is doing 2, and then 2 is doing 3. It's like cascading. But yeah, let's not change the shape of this of 2. So let's go here, and we can change in manual mode. It's subtle, but let's change this one to around here, and then change this one to around here. Let's change the volume. I think that's just gorgeous sounding, and it really has that air of the Skyrim soundtrack, which I was going for. I'm just going to go ahead and mess with it a little bit, and you'll hear what it sounds like. All right, that's pretty much that's all to it. I've been working on that, like I said, for a few days now. You can tweak it here and there, just mess maybe with the wave shapes and so forth. Potentially a little bit of fine tuning on the oscillators. Definitely not oscillator 2. Let's just hear that. Watch. Actually, I guess that's not bad. I take that back. Oh yeah, it is. It is. Okay. Like I said, that's what you get. You get a kind of a dissonant tone, which is more attuned to exponential FM versus linear FM. But yeah, like you could change the frequencies of the other oscillators just slightly. Give them a little detune. Yeah, so just with no effects. Still sounds cool. But yeah, those lovely effects that the Peak is just so good at. And you get such awesomely beautiful sounds out of it. So yeah, I hope this helped you out, maybe give you some inspiration to use your Peak, or maybe even take another synth and just attempt to use, if it has some FM capabilities or some cross mod or oscillator sync capabilities, and mess around with having one oscillator really control other oscillators and things like that. and then just blasting it into an effects section or some external reverb or something and see what you can do with it. Yeah, and really, if you have an analog synth out there, or even if you have a digital synth with here's the thing, the reason I really like the Peak is because the external voice section after the oscillators is almost all analog, so the drive has its own characteristics with it, and it's not this weird alias digital sounding like mess when you use. That's the thing that really got to me on the ASM Hydrasynth. Well, that is a fantastically good sounding synth. The two things I did not like about it were extreme drive characteristics on the oscillators. If you push that, it was a little too weird, or I should say the filters, and the resonance. So if you have an analog synth, I would highly just encourage that you mess with the drive characteristics of your synth and see what happens. Something like the Minilog, for example, or the XD, if you drive the filter on that, it sounds gorgeous. As you saw from my last video, you take the Take 5, you put a lot of drive into the filter, and you close it down and you add some resonance, and that filter sounds amazing too. Just try the drive sections on your synths. As far as I know, all of the synths I've tried that have a full digital filter and VCA section, well, not just VCA, I should say filter section, the drive doesn't sound particularly good the way it's emulated. I'm sure there's some soft synths out there that have really good drive characteristics, but yeah, in this case, it works out to make that patch just sound so massive and awesome. Anyway, if you like this kind of video, give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back later.